All right, so what everybody's been waiting for, it's Mondays with J Leman. It's Jeremy Warner and J Leman, our All-American linebacker. And Jay, what a win for Illinois. Going to Nebraska, and man, that had the feeling of a we're back party, and Illinois crashed it, and it spoiled it. 31-24, big win in overtime. Coming back from several deficits in that one. But what a win for the program. What a win for the coaching staff, which I thought had a great game.
Sure.
So many angles, but let's zoom out, Jay, just big picture. What stood out most to you in this win?
I think what do good football teams do? They can play 4 quarters. That's what we did. They wear out teams. I thought that was very evident. You know, they had, I believe that Nebraska had 1 rush yard in the 4th quarter. And that's not even taking all the sacks that were in the overtime. So it can be manipulated. But I think if you look at the running backs, something like 24 carries for 95 yards, which is really the true rushing stat. Obviously, Rayola didn't get out there to scramble that much either. So you wore them out, and then you stuck with the running game, and you out physical them down the stretch. I think that was evident. You responded to things that happened that didn't go your way. Calls went both ways in that game. You responded, and I think when it really became crunch time, you relied on your players and playmakers to make it happen, and that's what good football teams do. And so I give them a lot of credit. And I will say also the hidden yardage in that game. It's not just that you outgained. The hidden yards was a huge story. I mean, there was 4 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalties from face mask or hands to the face. That's 60 yards. There was about 60 yards, I would say, in kickoff return and punt return yardage, right, for Illinois. So you're looking at about 180 to 200 yards when you add up return yards and penalties that went Illinois' way. So you really outgain them much more than you actually think you did when you add in the hidden yardage.
Yeah, I thought it was huge. We keep talking about winning on the margins, and Illinois is starting to do that this season. And I want to get into the depth conversation, Jay, because I do feel like depth is starting to shine through as they're in year 4 of this program. But let's start with Barry Lunney. 2 years ago, the red zone was a huge issue for this team in a good season, but they struggled to score touchdowns in the red zone. They've been in the red zone 16 times. They've scored 16 times, 11 touchdowns with that. But I thought Barry was in his bag using his tight ends, which is not a big strength. But what do you make of their success in that area? What has gone into that? Because, boy, he was cooking with some of those play calls.
Well, he was cooking. I would say, first off, it's not an accident. I think it's probably been an emphasis all the way for the last 2 years, but in spring and in fall camp. First off, everything goes better when you have a quarterback, right, that can make good decisions. So you can't be 16 for 16 in the red zone and have a quarterback turn the football over, which we know Luke's not. So the quarterback gives you options with his feet and his ability to extend plays. But what I love is that Barry Lunney has been super creative in getting the ball in the end zone. In 2022, I don't know if it was just let's get Chase Brown touchdowns, but what we felt like it wasn't as innovative as maybe it could have been. Or maybe it had a Brett Bielema flair of we're going to run the football into the end zone. Now it's like, dude, we're going to get points the best we can get. And what was so interesting about this game is the 3 touchdowns in the second half were all a variation of basically the same play. So you had, we used to call it K1, but the first one at Tanner Arkin is basically just, it's such a tough read for a linebacker because they have to fire out on that lead play and they have a fullback slip to the flat and then your tight end can slip out too. And that safety's pressing up, right? To make a play on that lead play. Tanner Arkin was open. Well, in the second one, they had Brandon Henderson, right? Brandon Henderson on the tackle over, which was a great little play. And even though he reports as eligible, that's not that uncommon because he's been in the game a lot, reported as eligible if you look at film going back to Central Michigan and whatnot. So then you also saw the Pat Bryant, which was a great call, sneaking your best player in with a 21 personnel call, right? So you're like, okay, what we know is Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant are on the field. We know there's, 2 tight ends. It was probably a 12 personnel call because they had
12 personnel.
2 tight ends and only 1 back, but Pat Bryant then moves to the tailback. So it's not 21, it's 12. And so that's a little confusing, not to the offense, but to a defense. Like, okay, well, I know Pat Bryant should be, where is he? Brett says he stays hidden. He did stay hidden if you watch the replay, and snuck out on that little flat pass. So really a variation of kind of the same things, but done differently with different personnel. And what I love is that when you're able to run the ball, it sets up all of those things, because those were all play actions in which they had to respect the run. But I give Barry Lunney a lot of credit. I thought this was his best game as an Illinois offensive coordinator. He called all the right shots at the right time. And I thought it was, we kind of read between the lines with Brett, and he said, hey, we thought we could wear them down and kind of soften them up with the pass. One thing I saw, you talk about depth, we didn't see Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher come out of the game that much. They were running all over the place. They played with great effort, but I felt like they really wore down because they were having to, chase pass plays. They were having to chase Luke Altmyer. I also saw Brett sub in the first quarter, our backup defensive lineman, which I thought was unique. And this is huge for this program going forward, right? Those guys getting real game reps. And that really paid dividends, where Nebraska chose not to do that early on. And, man, it really hammered them in the fourth quarter. We got from Barry Lunney. But Barry Lunney, man, I really liked how he has developed Luke Altmyer. I like how Justin Stepp has developed receivers. I think Bart Miller and the offensive line had their best game. But Barry Lunney pulled all the right strings, especially on third down, red zone, and in critical moments.
It was really hot that day. So no, that is a noted point of rotating early. I think that really, really helped. Following up on the offensive side here, Luke and Barry seem to have a really good thing going. Sure. What stands out to you? Because I think Barry's calling it well, but obviously, as you said, he's got a quarterback that's running it well and executing it well. What stands out about Luke and what Barry's doing with him?
Well, I think first of all, their demeanor. Barry Lunney is the offensive coordinator demeanor that you want. It's often said that in the headsets, the defensive guys are just yelling and going crazy, and the offensive guys are thinking about how do we execute stuff. So I think Barry has that demeanor that you want an offensive coordinator.
There's a shot of Aaron just yapping. I mean,
it's just crazy. As Kirk Ferentz once said, he's like, I went over to the defensive headset, and he told us it was just crazy. It was just nonsense. It was like, hit this guy, do this. Like, it's a totally different mentality, right? It's about execution. And so I think that first off that Luke takes his demeanor from Barry, right? And hey, how do I respond to different things? What I've been super impressed with what Luke has been able to do, only quarterback in the nation right now with 10 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. What I've been super impressed is his ability to create a very catchable ball for his receivers. And he did have 2 drops to actually, ironically, to Franklin and Bryant. You don't think they'd drop something, but he has underrated accuracy, right? Even on his deep ball is very accurate, but he has very catchable ball. He's reading through his progressions better. The one thing that I think Barry would like to see him better is, I think once he gets a little pressure, it's hard for him to keep his eyes downfield. There was a couple times you had Ashton Hollins open, you had Pat Bryant open on that 4th down drive. If he could have kept his eyes downfield and from the rush. So there's a little bit of holding on the ball too much, but he buys times with his legs. What I like what Barry's done, though, is he has done a phenomenal job of really creating a game plan of getting Luke going, keeping him going, having enough shots in there to stretch the field, and also run the football, scheming people up in the run, as we'll talk about a little bit as well, which is the run is a quarterback's best friend. But I just see the development. You see they think that they know Donovan Riley getting better and better each snap, and he's certainly a good player. We've seen Luke just get better and better and better, really since that Penn State game last year. I know he got hurt, but we've seen him play at a different level. He's playing at a level right now that, quite frankly, he might not have the name recognition of being an all Big Ten player, but I'm not necessarily sure anybody's really played better than him through the first 4 weeks. So if you did a first third of the season all Big Ten team, you could see Luke Altmyer on there for sure. And so I think that Barry's done a phenomenal job. I think Justin Stepp has done a phenomenal job, and something that's George McDonald, because he was here, as far as the chemistry between the receivers and what Zachary Franklin's brought of having another guy on the opposite side of Pat Bryant. There's a lot of things I can say, but I said that Luke does a lot of things good last week, not a lot great. I'm going to take that back. I think he's shown he can lead in a very phenomenal way, right?
It's one of
I
my
think
biggest
that's huge.
questions entering the season. Jay was like, I see the talent, I see the
Right.
playmaking. He got better as the season went along. It's
Right.
now, can you elevate? And that to me is leadership, whether you're a captain or not. Can you elevate in moments where the team needs you? He's shown that in 2 games against ranked opponents.
How many times have we not had a guy at Illinois where you feel like we can go down and get a score? It's just such a critical position in football, especially college football, with the way the game is, to have a guy that can do that. And I do believe that he has excellent touch and excellent accuracy. It's not the strongest arm you're ever going to see. He's certainly not the quickest guy, but he certainly has enough wiggle to get out. He doesn't have necessarily the size that maybe you would want in a prototypical pro quarterback. I mean, he's got a lot of good things going for it. And I think if you were I'll put out Hudson Card. Look at Hudson Card's numbers against Oregon State. Look what Michigan had to do to beat USC. I think there's a lot of Big Ten teams, a lot of SEC teams that would trade for Luke Altmyer right now. And so I think we're in a very, very, very good position. That's a hats off to the coaching staff and the work Luke's done mentally and physically.
I texted a buddy the other day, what would Michigan give to have Luke Altmyer right now?
Well, they would. This is my whole argument about Michigan is you went 41-2 in the last 3 years prior to this year. What was stopping you from going and paying $4 or $5 million in the portal for the quarterback of your choice? I'm still wondering why that didn't necessarily happen. I think it was a huge blunder. I know they had the coaching change and everything, and I know they want to run the football, but you knew you had a first rounder leaving. Why in the world did you not? And you knew who you had on the bench. You watched these guys practice for 2 or 3 years. To me, that's a huge thing. This is an Illinois podcast, but right. I would say I'm not sure why Michigan didn't spend $5 million in the portal to go get somebody.
Because then they'd be a national title contender. Like that's again, Illinois doesn't have a quarterback problem. Well, a team like Michigan,
go pay Cal, go pay Ohio State's Cal McCord to come be your quarterback. He better what you have now. He's at Syracuse, right? So it's like I just don't understand. You'll be a national title contender right there, and you obviously have a defense and ability to run the football that is on that level, but certainly not at the quarterback position.
All right, Jay, let's give the offensive line its flowers, right? I mean, we didn't see it through a couple games against FBS opponents, but Illinois ran for 129 yards, 5 yards per carry after halftime against a very good Nebraska front. As you said, what changed, whether it was the O-line, the running backs, play calling, what was different?
Well, first and foremost, I think so much of blocking is attitude. People don't want to say that because you can't break it down, Mm-hmm. But I thought they just played more physical. There wasn't I felt like I saw more negative plays in Central Michigan and Kansas than I did against Nebraska for sure, as far as like getting nothing.
Even running backs had 0 carries of minus yardage.
Exactly, right? So we always had somebody falling forward, and I thought the wedge of our 2 guards and our center was much more stout than it's been. Guys, it has not been stout. There has been miscommunication. There has been a softness in there. I don't know if it's because obviously taking the wrong steps, wrong technique. I'm not saying those guys are soft. They were just much more firm, and I would argue against much better players they were playing. And Ash Hutmacher is an all Big Ten player. Ty Robinson, 6-year player. He's probably second, third team all Big Ten. These are big, big men in there in the interior, and they did a phenomenal job. I also saw the tight ends blocking well. Okay, Tanner Arkin had a better game. We'll break this down in the film review. The first run of overtime was a masterclass of Barry Lunney, who running the bunch set. Okay, so they run the bunch set a lot. We run 6 or 7 plays out of the bunch. They extended the bunch out a little bit. That pulls that extra safety over toward Pat Bryant. They bring, Zachary Franklin wide to the left side. So now I'm bringing that safety over to one side. Zachary Franklin's over there, brings the corner over, and then they motion over Tanner Arkin. No adjustment, total MA by Nebraska. Tanner Arkin then gets the edge on Ty Robinson. There's no overhang player. The corner's way over there in Zachary Franklin, and the other safety slanted toward Pat Bryant, and it's wide open. So some of it was play calling and play design. And so we'll break that down, but that's the kind of stuff that happens. It's those inches, those little missed alignments that you can confuse people. That helps. But on the other side, too, I thought our tackles played a great game. I really think
it felt like they ran more off tackle, right?
Yeah, I thought Melvin Priestley and J.C. Davis had his best run blocking game. We knew that Melvin had some juice in the run blocking. I saw J.C. Davis a lot of times on Ty Robinson handling him. I saw JC Davis getting up to the second level. So I thought our tackles as well happened to have a better game. We were able to get the edge much better and make those guys go sideline to sideline.
All right, I want to take a minute to tell you about Home Field Apparel because they are the premium collegiate apparel brand, and they're based in nearby Indianapolis. Home Field sent me a few shirts, and what I love about them is, of course, they have incredibly comfortable, well-fitting shirts, but they also have officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. And they have more than 180 plus available colleges, including, yes, your Illinois Fighting Illini. They have great gear for the upcoming football season, so for the warm weather games, check out their Script Illini t-shirt, the Orange Ringer tee, the vintage Oski Wawa helmet, or for the fall chillier games, check out the Script Illini hoodie, the Flying Illini hoodie, the Flying Illini quarter zip, and if they're still available, you might want to check out homefieldapparel.com for this. Check out their Script Bomber jacket. It is awesome. Also, don't miss their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. So Home Field is giving away these special football boxes, and these platinum VIP boxes include 3 never-before-seen items from your school that are not available anywhere else. They're curated so fans have new gear to wear all season long, suitable for all weather conditions. And these platinum boxes also include other exclusive items, including a new hat or ringer, a VIP koozie, and a 2024 Platinum Pass, which guarantees 20% off and early access to your school's football releases through the 2024 season. The football boxes are available on August 9th, so these will sell out quick, so go check them out. Go to homefieldapparel.com to check out their great selection of Illini gear and use code Illini24, that's all capitals, Illini24, for 15% off. That's Illini24 for 15% off at homefieldapparel.com. All right, let's focus a little bit on the defense, Jay. Dylan Raiola is pretty good for a freshman. He doesn't play really like a freshman until late in the game.
Yeah.
But Illinois kind of sat in zone for a lot the first half, it felt like, but gave up just 7 points in the second half and overtime. Obviously, the defensive front got after it in overtime and just shut the door there. So that defensive front's really starting to assert itself. But what stood out to you defensively about Aaron Henry and his crew?
Well, I think what I love is just their ability to say, okay, what we did in 2022 and in 2023 didn't necessarily work the way we wanted to. Can we change? Can we adjust? Can we put the players that are here now, not the players that were here 2 years ago, in a position to have success? And we don't have 5 stars across the board, like for on the defensive side, but how can we do that? And so what I was really impressed was, yes, Raiola, guys, he's going to get some throws, but can we tackle and get the guy down? For the most part, we did, right? Mm-hmm. Number 2, did we take away the run? Yeah, we did. There was a moment there in the third quarter where you felt like they were running the ball a little bit better, but the adjustments really to make that happen. Now, I will say this too: they in the zone coverage, Raiola did have some windows, but it allowed us to really have eyes on Raiola and make breaks on the ball, right? And also tackle in space. So I think all of those things. And then I wish, and I think going back, because it's easy to have, I wanted him to bring more pressure early. If I think I could go back in the game, I felt like Raiola had just had way too much time early. We were not getting there with 4. How could we get there? So I think I would have liked to see them heated up early because they were kind of controlling the ball. But the big thing is they made them one-dimensional. And Nebraska has to be careful. With a talented quarterback, you can kind of get into, let's just try to throw to beat teams. And this is the reason why you can't do it, because you end up stopping the clock. You end up kind of getting away, or the one pass you need to complete on 3rd and 3, you miss a wide open, tight end, which, by the way, it happens. It's what young quarterbacks do. And so you can't rely on that. The running game and the defense travels. And when you outrun a team and you stop the run, you usually win. And that's what Illinois did, even though you don't win the turnover battle.
We'll break it down in the film room along with some of the red zone calls and some of the offensive line, Jay. But what stood out to you about the overtime? Aaron did get after it, and it really did put pressure there.
Well, what I love is, we saw the first play, last year, if you watched it last week, if you watched the film room, we saw the quick Texas stuff from Alec Bryant and Gabe Atkins when Alec Bryant and Seth Coleman were actually in the line at tackle position. And I believe they brought Briggs and Atkins out to the defensive end. Well, if you look at the first play of overtime, they run a similar stunt. It's a true Texas, not a quick Texas. I mean, it takes a little bit longer to develop, but this time Alec Bryant is on the outside. Gabe Akis and Briggs are on the inside, and they wanted to run it in the first play. It was a false start, but they didn't show it. So they didn't reveal the call. And what you saw that Texas, which I love a Texas stunt, because what it does is it brings Gabe Akis back outside and then puts Alec Bryant right in the face of Dylan Raiola. And they had a tackle over there who was inexperienced. He was a backup. And so you did it at the right time. And that just sets the tone, right? The biggest thing to overtime success, and why I love the Kaden Fagan run early for us on offense, is to have a positive play on your first play. That's the biggest thing. Like you have to have a positive play. But when you score first, like Illinois did, you have to know as defensive team, they have 4 downs no matter what. You know they're going for it on 4th down. So to get a negative play is really huge, but it's still like, okay, well, they still got 3 downs. It could still be, 3rd and 15. In that case, with the penalty in that was phenomenal. And then the second play, I thought Dennis Briggs made a tremendous effort play. I mean, you talk about tremendous effort to make that play and to get Raiola down. And then the last play, similar, not the last play, but the play after that, he kind of scrambled out. The controversial, was it late hit? Was it not? And then the last play, which was 4th down, similar to what we saw in Kansas, where, hey, let's not show pressure, but let's bring it late. I thought Dylan Rosiak, the battle of the Dylans right there was won by Rosiak. How many times do you see a Mike linebacker, I'd be included in this, have a straight shot at the quarterback and just whiff because the guy just steps to the side? Yeah. I like that he broke down and made it. I thought that was masterfully called by Aaron Henry, but it's a testament. They looked tired in overtime. Like they looked like I don't know if it was a mental thing. They've lost a couple overtimes in a row. I understand that. But, man, they looked tired, where Illinois looked like they had some juice.
Yeah, that's a cap tip to Tank Wright, obviously, but also cap tip to, I think, depth, Jay. And some of these guys were mentioned. Dennis Briggs, what a huge addition in the transfer portal. We saw Terrence Brooks a little bit more. We saw Torrey Cox make a huge play, stripping that ball away.
I jumped out of how about that play by Torrey Cox not to give up on a play?
Yeah.
All the way through. I mean, that was phenomenal. Terrence Brooks had a lot of time in there, right? Depth. I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going about the depth.
Yeah, Tanner Arkin. I mean, we're talking about a lot of transfers here, by the way, but Josh McCray showed up the last couple of weeks. I mean, you're starting to see just more depth in this program, which they did lack in 2022. They just stayed healthy enough to not really show it enough. But last year, we obviously saw that was an issue. So it certainly seems like depth. I mean, special teams, some of these things that can win you the margins of games is starting to show up.
Well, and that's the mark of a good program, right? Because that's actually a sustainability thing. That's what's most encouraging to me, is when you start having contributions from guys who aren't your quote unquote best players. They're good players, maybe not seen as your best players, but when you start seeing special teams thrive week in and week out, and guys getting early reps and making big plays, you're getting a deeper football team. The deeper football team is not so much I can win games and wear people out this year. Yes. But it's, hey, I'm getting live reps. And usually younger players are on special teams that they're getting live reps and they're going to be ready to step in. We're not going to have a huge drop off, right? Like Gabe Akis and Seth Coleman and Alec Bryant are going to be gone next year. Maybe not Gabe. I know he's got another year. But the fact that Joe Barner's getting reps, right? That's huge.
By the way, Brian could be back for one more year too.
I'm sorry, he's at the 7th. But Joe Barner's getting reps. The fact that you went out and got Torrey Cox, he's a little bit different corner. You got Terrence Brooks when Caleb Patterson, who's been playing at a high level, got banged up, right? And you have somebody to come in. The fact that you have Malik Elzy, who probably could be starting at other places in the Big Ten right now, come in, and Brett says, hey, played phenomenal when Zakari went down for a little bit. Guys, those are things that don't just – Kevin Wigginton comes in, gets a couple reps at guard. So those are things that you don't necessarily maybe think is a huge deal. But, man, as far as development of a program, you start to see 4 running backs got the ball, right? You start to see, wait, we have some pieces there that we can build on. This isn't a paper-thin team, which we've seen in the past.
I want to bring up one more guy that we didn't hit on with the offense, and that's Kaden Fagan. We saw 3 runs of 10-plus yards, obviously the huge one in overtime. But I was able to talk with him afterwards, and he said, I was trying to do too much. in the first couple games. And we kind of talked about that, Jay. It didn't feel like he was just keeping it simple and running through some people. He was running through some people. Obviously, he had bigger holes to run through.
Sure.
But what did you see from Kaden Fake?
Well, I saw he was much more decisive. He is not a dance in the backfield guy, right? It's just not who he is. But man, if he gets to the line of scrimmage in a hurry, it's a guaranteed 3, 4, 5 yards, right? And he's a better cutback runner and vision guy than you would expect. The only thing is that when you got really good vision, sometimes you see too much and you try to make too much happen. And I think he kind of simplified. I think they gave him simpler runs. And I think, that outside zone play that they can run with the cutback has hit a couple times back behind the left tackle in a couple games. It's been a really good play for him. And so I just think if he plays like that and gets help from the offensive line and has running plays that are favoring what his style of running is, he can be a great back, and he's an absolute load. And we see when he gets in the open field, that first run in overtime, man, he's a tank and tough to bring down, almost made it all the way to the end zone if he didn't just step on the end line there.
I do want to give a shout out again to special teams, Jay. I mean, you're seeing what bad special teams looks like with Nebraska. I thought they had a poor game there, but Hank Beatty bounces back from that fumble, which can't happen, but he does well on the return game. Ethan Machowski keeps kicking it in the end zone with these touchbacks, which kind of gets overrated. And, Hugh Robertson had a huge clutch punt late in that game to make sure that they needed out. So I just think Robbie Disher's unit's playing really well.
Yeah, I think Hugh's been having a real solid year. That was a huge play that just made him, sit down, because it was kind of it gave a little bit of momentum back to Illinois, who kind of floundered on that end of game drive before overtime. Machowski's just he's so consistent, you forget about it. I mean, again, we still don't know why we didn't kick a field goal, from the 33-yard line. I wasn't there, so I don't know what the wind was like. It did seem like the wind was coming a little bit in the face, but we've had guys make stuff in the wind. It's neither here nor there now. But
would have been a huge question for us right away if they ended up losing that game.
Exactly, right? But I've been really pleasantly surprised by Bryant. You kind of got the feel, not Bryant, excuse me. Bryant, yes, but Beatty, you kind of have to feel that Beatty was the possession guy and Resetich was maybe your explosive guy, but he couldn't hold on to the ball. But Beatty he's got a real knack for making that first guy miss and then getting upfield. I think that's the key. And then we saw Wilcher have a couple of solid returns as well. So that's the hidden yardage we're talking about, right? If you can out-return people, if you can pin them inside the 10, and if you can have them always getting touchbacks, those things add up in a game. And let's Raiola maybe complete 3 or 4 passes, but he's only at the 30. So it's like, okay, now we're kind of like, do we kick a field goal? Do we go for it? Well, they kick a field goal and miss it. So like those things add up over time.
Yeah. All right, Jay, another huge opportunity for this program. 4-0, ranked number 19 in the country, going to number 8, Penn State. Early was 18-point difference here in the spread. But Penn State has a familiar offense because Andy Kotelnicki, the former Kansas offensive coordinator, is now there. So let's focus on the defensive side of the ball. What's the key for Aaron Henry's defense to give Illinois a chance here at Penn State?
Well, I think what's been the key all year is just limiting explosive plays. If we look at it's Kotelnicki, did I say it right?
Yeah.
Look what he did against Kansas. That's well documented in game 2 last year. I think there was 19 plays of 10 or 15 yards or more, right? Like 19 big plays. That's a ton. Now, Aaron Henry's learned from a lot. They're not going to live in the past, but it is a similar scheme, right? And I think what's so difficult about his offense, Kotelnicki's offense, is that there's so many different rule breakers in that offense. What I mean by that is you'll have pullers, which usually tells a linebacker, hey, I'm going to go this way the play going, and they'll go the opposite way. Not always, but sometimes. What I think is really interesting, though, is I want to see this offense, and I haven't watched Penn State in person without a mobile quarterback. Drew Aller is certainly a good athlete, but he's not a Jalen Daniels. So much of the play design of Kotelnicki at Kansas was getting Jalen Daniels in space. They don't have that now. Now, you might argue they have 2 tailbacks that are really, really good and always have weapons and good tight ends and different things. But it's an interesting offense, right? And so it's going to be creative. If we keep the ball in front and bend but not break and get more turnovers than we did, because we didn't have that many turnovers against Nebraska. People have been asking me, man, it sounds like it's Is that spread for real? It seems high to me because I've watched Illinois. I haven't necessarily watched Penn State. But yeah, I think if you can keep people in front, you're going to be close. If you let big plays go, we're still not high powered enough to get into a shootout just with our style of play. And that's not what we want to do.
Yeah. All right. Penn State lost a lot of talent on the defense, but Abdul Carter is one of the best players they'll play all year. Now playing edge rusher, and they always have talent. So what do you think the key for Barry Lunney's offense is against Penn State?
Well, I think it always comes down to running the ball. If you can run the ball and prevent them from just pinning their ears back and knowing what's going to happen, that's going to be the key. Now, remember, former Indiana coach Tom Allen is the DC over there. I like Tom. I would. He's like the opposite of the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa's going to run one call. Tom Allen's going to run the kitchen sink, and sometimes that's really good. They'll create a lot of chaos and turnovers, and sometimes they will give up big plays. And I just think I think when it comes to the offensive side of the football, if we can run the football, I will take Pat Bryant and a healthy Zachary Franklin matched up on anybody.
Yeah. I
don't think we are overmatched by anybody. And that's the thing. You get them in a one-on-one matchup. The game's even in that point. I'll take Kaden Fagan running at full speed on anybody in their front seven. Right now, we're going to see how good our tackles are in J.C. Davis and Melvin Priestley. Probably advantage Abdul Carter, but Priestley and Davis haven't given you reason for concern, right? So I have no doubt that Lunney is going to have a great scripted first drive. He always does. He's going to figure out some stuff. And I believe that he's going to be in his bag when it gets into taking shots downfield and in the red zone. We can see that. This is a redemption game for Luke too. We know he had 4 interceptions. We know this is hung over his head. I think Luke Altmyer will be ready to play. I think the spread is too high from what we've seen, because under Brett Bielema, we haven't really gotten blown out in that many games. But man, I think it's going to be an exciting football game for sure.
What an opportunity. And you look at as we can do, Jay, they can focus on being 1-0 every week, but we can look at the rest of the way. You got a huge stretch coming up, a tough stretch coming up. But ESPN's Football Power Index now has Illinois favored in 4 of its last 8 games. They predict Illinois to go 8-4, which would be a heck of a season for Illinois. But just slight underdogs at Rutgers, just kind of slight underdogs against Michigan at home. I mean, how much is your expectations, or how much is your outlook of this team changed with the 4-0 start?
Oh, it's changed a ton. I mean, I kind of came into the season and I thought there could be as little as 4 wins or as many as 7 wins, just kind of based on where we were at and how we would be playing. Right now, I see it. We could be anywhere from 6 to 10 wins. I really believe that, depending on how we play. People might say that's a pipe dream, but I don't think so. You know, you could make the argument that could happen. Now, here's how it usually plays out. We'll pick up a game that we shouldn't win in the next 4, and we'll lose a game we shouldn't lose in the last 4. That's usually how football works out. And I'll tell you this, you know, Nebraska looks at us like we look at Purdue. We think we should beat Purdue, but they always beat us. Nebraska think they should beat us, but we always beat them, right?
Right.
And so nothing is guaranteed. And if you watch the NFL too, gosh, nothing's guaranteed in the NFL. You're like, okay, how does this happen? You get good players you get athletes on both sides. Somebody gets confident. But what I really like is we have a quarterback that down the stretch can win games for us. That's huge. Number 2 is you feel like you have some real momentum and confidence. Can you get that confidence when you're in training camp? I think it's hard, right? I think you can talk about we want to be good, but when you go out and win 4 games, 2 against ranked opponents, you're like, man, this is great. And another big point I think about this game is who's more battle tested? Penn State has beaten West Virginia, not a bad team. They obviously beat Kansas at home. West Virginia was at home, but they played Kent State. They played a couple other teams who are just like, I don't know if they're really battle tested. I feel like we're way more game. This team is more game battle tested this year. And then it can only pay dividends for us down the stretch. So I do see a lot of potential for this. If Michigan can't throw, that's going to be a tough ball game for Michigan to win. Yep. It's going to be really difficult. So I'm interested to see if Illinois can stay healthy and get to the bye week relatively healthy. what it could be.
Yeah, Jay, and you kind of look at the rest of the schedule, like Purdue, we keep bringing it up. You have to win that game this year. That looks like a train wreck right now. They might be a 2-win team potentially this year. Minnesota did not look impressive against Iowa. Michigan State might be a little bit better than people thought, but Northwestern just does not look very good so far this season. So some of those teams on the schedule, Michigan not being able to throw it very well.
Yep.
It just looks like you're better than people thought, and maybe some of the people on the schedule outside of maybe Penn State and Oregon are a little bit worse than we thought.
I actually think the two key games in this, people are going to laugh at me, but I think Purdue and Rutgers are so important in this schedule. Purdue's a game that obviously we play every year along with Northwestern. We have to beat them. They are now a rival. And obviously with the Ryan Walter situation, they're not playing good football right now. Those are key to me. Like those two games are really key. I think the Schiano's always going to have a tough team. They're always going to be gritty and tough. And I think it's at Rutgers, correct? Yep. Hey, so that's going to be a tough game. I remember 2022, that was a game Illinois thought, or 2021, they thought they should win, and Rutgers came into Memorial Stadium and won. So I think every game can be big, right? But as Brett says, games get bigger. I think you can win two out of the next four. I really do. We wanted 2 out of 5. I think you win 2 out of the next 4. And I think if you do that, you feel pretty good. And if you were to win the last 4 of the season, which you would, let's just say you're toss-ups or slightly favored in, a 10-2 team with a schedule like Illinois had, where you said, hey, I played Penn State, I played Michigan, I played Oregon, I played a non-con team, Power 5 team that was ranked at the time. I went to Nebraska and won. You'd have a hard time being out of the playoff, I think. If you did that, I think you'd be in.
On this schedule with it, if they get to 10 wins, certainly they would be in the college football playoff.
Because here's the thing, that's basically the story of Penn State every year, right? They're not good enough to make it into the conference championship. They have two quality losses, if there is such a thing. You would be in the college football playoff. So to stay here and say, hey, we're Illinois, we're 6-2. If we go 6-2 from here, and we're favored in half of those games, so we win 2 games we're not supposed to, we could be in the college football playoff. It's a good day to be an Illini football fan. I mean, those are things
you can dream about that right now.
We might never. You do dream about that. I think that's motivating. I think, why not dream about that? Yes. Hey, you have to be 1-0. You have to become 10-2 or whatever you want to become. But remember, I said this last week. Last time they went to Nebraska, they had won. So it's not like they're going to be intimidated. Last time they went to Penn State with, I would argue, a team not nearly as confident as this team, maybe just as talented, we found out later, but they won. So I don't think there's guys in those rooms that are just terrified of like, I don't know if we can win. I think Pat Bryant thinks he's better than every receiver in the country, as he should, right? like as he should. So I don't think Pat Bryant's going to go out there and like, oh, I'm intimidated. I don't think Luke Altmyer is going to I'm intimidated. I don't think this offensive line or defense is going to be intimidated. I think they're going to play hard. Now, stuff can happen in a game and stuff can go sideways, but I think it's going to be a competitive matchup.
I agree with you. J Leman, you're the goods. It's fun to talk about 4-0, heading to a top 10 team with a chance to really put yourself even further on the national spotlight and in these kind of conversations.
It's just good to be excited about Illinois football. We had that a little bit when Illinois was it 6-1 or 7-1? 7-1, and you felt some real excitement. You don't get as many chances like this as an Illinois fan to be excited about football with Illinois, and so you really got to relish it, right? And so I'm relishing it. I'm excited. I saw it's a night game. I think 6:30 on NBC. Hopefully it's on NBC and not Peacock. My hate on Peacock is they never let you rewind the game in time. It was like you had to it's just brutal. All right. So anyway, let's go.
J Leman, you're the goods. Thanks, man.
See ya.